Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Underwater Photography Show. As always, I'm Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And today, as I'm sure you guys all know, the Underwater Photographer of the Year 2025 results have been published. So today, Alex and I are going to go through the category winners and the overall winner and talk about them a little bit. I know at first, Alex, I know you want to say a few things about the competition.
Yeah, I mean, just really what you and I were kind of talking about before we started recording was the fact, one of the things you said to me was that, you actually don't know who any of these pictures are by. And I think that's something that really struck all of us in the judging room when we were judging UPY this year, was that there were so many images we hadn't seen. Like the majority of images just felt new and unseen, which was really exciting. And I think it shows that, despite the fact you follow kind of religiously all the good photographers on Instagram, how I think photographers are increasingly realizing the importance of and the value of an unseen image. And I think a lot of people, sit on their competition shots until, with both the Wildlife Photographer of the Year and Underwater Photographer of the Year both having closing dates around the same time, a lot of people sit on their pictures. And I often see when we announce or when we send the photographers their results in UPY, a whole slew of images suddenly pop up on social media that people have been keeping for UPY they didn't quite place, so they're happy to share them. And it's always a really good day for seeing fantastic images, because the thing with UPY, it was a record entry again this year. It was 6,752, I think we had pictures, and it's a record entry. It's the majority of the best shooters out there are entering. There's a load of amazing shooters you didn't know about, because there's a heck of a lot of people out there who maybe don't have big social media presences or aren't kind of active members of the community, and you kind of don't always know that they exist, but they're doing amazing work. And kind of all their best stuff comes in. And honestly, with that 6,700 pictures, it's not 6,700 pictures like you might shoot on a trip. It's the very best of 2 or 3 years worth of trips from 700 photographers. And so it's a very high standard. And the fact that so much of it was unseen is really remarkable. And, we always wish we could show even more of them, because they are stunning. So it's really exciting. But let's get to it. I'm going to pull up the slideshow. Because I was a judge of this contest, there's not so much point in me commenting so heavily on the pictures. I've written judges' comments for lots of them on the website. I was involved in the judging. I had my chance to have my say. I don't, they're not all my favorite shots in each category, the category winners, because it's a 3-person judging process, and, it's, we all have an equal say, and I get outvoted as much as the other two get outvoted on different pictures. But I did have my chance to make my arguments for the pictures I did prefer in those categories, and ultimately those arguments, weren't strong enough to change the other photographers' minds, so the other judges' minds, right? So I've pulled up our first picture, which is actually just the cover of the yearbook, which was I was going to put up while we had that preamble, but I forgot about that. Yeah, this is our yearbook picture taken. I
actually do know this one.
Yeah,
and I love this picture.
Taken by Underwater Pat. So
yeah, so it's a great cover choice.
Yeah,
to see Monterey guys back-to-back years getting represented on the cover.
Yeah, but I think this shot's from the Falklands, isn't it?
Yeah, this sea line is from somewhere in Patagonia.
Okay, I thought it was Falklands.
Pat and John are both Monterey people, and John, I think, had the cover last year, I believe, with his cormorant. So
yeah. No, it was Shane was on the cover last year. Pat, John, I used as the opening slide for all the presentations.
Okay.
Gotcha. So it's usually like it's kind of I choose. There's my chance to show off some of my favorite shots. These Saeed, our yearbook editor, chose this one this year, but I chose Shane's last year. So right,
good choice.
Yeah, right. Let's get going then. So our first picture is our overall winner, so Underwater Photographer of the Year, and also the winner of the wide angle category, which is Alvaro Herrero, known to most in the community as Mikan. Who is, does a lot of amazing photography, particularly around Mexico. Although this picture here is from French Polynesia of a beautiful shot and quite a subtle shot, we felt, of a humpback male and its young calf. It's definitely a picture that works better the bigger you see it. It's definitely a picture because of the subtlety. It's not an Instagram friendly picture, but I think when it's reproduced big as a print or it's projected, it really comes to life. There's incredible detail in the picture, and you really catch the relationship between the mother and this very young calf, which just pop out of the background in this beautiful light. And we get lots of humpback pictures which are really in your face. And I think this picture just being a little bit more feeling like you're an observer rather than the whale is interacting with the photographer, we really like. The whales are interacting with each other rather than the baby swimming up to the photographer, which I think really marked this picture out as a very sensitive, very attractive image. And Mikan was, of course, our marine conservation photographer of the year 2 years ago, with a very heartbreaking image of a humpback whale, which in the 2 years since then has been in all sorts of competitions. It was in the wildlife photographer this year. I know he won big win Siena with it as well last year, after he'd won in the wildlife photographer. Oh, sorry, in the underwater photographer competition.
Yeah, it's one thing that I think is important to remember that I hadn't really considered until you just said it, is that when you guys view these images, you're seeing them on a big screen. Whereas a lot of the times, like even right now, my computer screen is only like 11 inches wide, and I'm viewing it at half that. So it's one of those things where I think you're right. This is probably a picture that you have to see, much bigger to really appreciate all the fine details in it and things like that. As anybody watching this knows, I'm a sucker for sun rays, so I love the sun rays in this, and I do like the positions of the two whales. I'm not sure how I feel about it as the overall winner. But I haven't seen every picture in the competition, so it's not necessarily easy for me to pass judgment on it right away. I do really like the positioning of the whales. Like I said, I love the moment, like you said, interacting with the baby and the mother versus the baby swimming up to the camera or something like that, which are always fun and cute. But it's nice to see a natural moment between mom and calf versus the calf paying attention to a person instead.
Yeah, so yeah, I think I would sort of follow that comment on by sort of agreeing that had the competition been judged on a single pass, which is obviously what most of us do when we look at competition results, I don't think this picture would necessarily have caught our attention the way it did. But it was one of those pictures, because we judge UPY over 3 days and we see each category 10, 15 times during that time. It was more when you start to come back to this picture, for the 7th, 8th, 10th time, that it really stuck with us.
I think that's, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think an important thing to remember too is that a lot of times for all of us viewing these, we're not sitting there with them, like you said, for 3 days in a row. We're seeing them really quickly, and it's not until you have potentially sat with them for a substantial amount of time and you start noticing more about the image, that they can really grow on you and appeal to you. And I find, this is a little bit of a digression, but I find that the more you sit with a picture, it goes one of two ways. You either start to dislike it a lot more, or you start to like it a lot more. And I think that was important that you said that, is the more time you often sit with these pictures, the more they start to grow on you, and you can really appreciate everything about them and the uniqueness.
And I think what we've found down the years is it's the pictures that have that staying power through the rounds of judging typically also have that staying power when in people's minds. And actually, they're the pictures people really remember. The pictures that kind of were our favorites on the first pass, yeah, everyone likes them. Everyone gives them a like on social media. But actually, they're not the ones that in 5 years' time people come back and talk to us about. Yeah. So it will be interesting. And, time is also a great judge on these category winners and overall winners, is whether this is a picture that really sticks in people's minds or not. But I'm very happy for the photographer, who's really a very passionate and very conscientious photographer, to have had this success. Right, let's keep rolling.
And I will say, I know you just said his name, but Mikan is one of my favorite photographers, period. He does some truly spectacular stuff. So it's nice to see him, like you said, get awarded, and for a less gruesome humpback picture this time.
Yeah. Right, moving on to the macro category now. And this picture was taken by Paolo Bondaschi. And I think it's a picture of a hairy shrimp perched on a piece of algae I think it's from Analau. I'm pretty sure it's from Analau.
Yeah, this one I really like. This might be my favorite of the category winners. It's the lighting is really really nicely done to have the shrimp properly exposed through the backlight, and to have the little bit of algae properly exposed and not to blow anything out. Having the shrimp with the eggs is obviously a fantastic bonus. And I've tried to shoot hairy shrimp, not many times, but I've tried to shoot them, and it's an exercise in frustration. So I can appreciate that this was a difficult picture to pull off, and just very well executed overall, I think. And yeah, one thing that I have started to see that I don't know, this is not anything to do with this picture really, but I've started to appreciate the smaller in frame macro images. It would have been interesting to see this just zoomed out a little bit more. I don't know if this is cropped or anything like that. Just to show the full algae leaf, I think could have been kind of cool as well. But
yeah, it's not. It's actually not cropped because we obviously did the raw file check.
Yeah, shoot through the raws. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, I think that actually the inclusion of the algae leaf though really makes a big difference.
Oh, for sure.
And that's sort of beginning to go into, it gives it that second element that makes it interesting, and then you've got the backlighting too. Actually, he inherited this from other divers who were on the dive. And it's funny. A friend of ours, Nick Moore, was posting one of his previous UPY winners earlier in the week, and actually one of the person who'd photographed that subject before him posted their version, which was nowhere near as special as his shot. And it is quite interesting when you have these big competition winners that other people are like, oh, I got to shoot that, but I didn't get quite the shot you got from it. Yeah. And it would be interesting to see what the photographers who had this before, he had it, got from it. Okay, let's roll into the next category. This is the Rex category. We really think it's really important in UPY to have a category that steers us well away from pure marine life photography and have a whole category dedicated to Rex. This photo is taken by last year's overall winner, Alex Dawson, and it's a picture of a deep wreck. It's at a depth of 100 meters, so 300 feet, in the Red Sea. So probably very rarely dived, very rarely seen this wreck, let alone photographed as well as this shot. And I really love this shot. I love the depth in the composition, but also the amount of story that there is from the way that the ship is resting into the reef, the divers exploring it, the cloud of fish above the wreck.
So, and you guys don't know any of the stories behind the pictures before you judge them. So the fact that it's such a deep and unique spot didn't factor in, correct?
No, yeah, we wouldn't. Yeah, we didn't know. We knew we didn't know the wreck, and we can see it's not at 5 meters, but I had no idea it was anywhere near as deep as this.
Yeah. So that I think is often important and a lot of other competitions make you write the story behind the shot beforehand, so you would know that this is so deep. I'm not a huge wreck fan, for both the photography side and the diving side, but I think it's a cool shot. I like the fact that he has the divers with the lights. It obviously helps to provide scale for the overall scene, because often I think if you have just a picture of a wreck and there's nothing in there that's familiar to a viewer, it can kind of lose some of its impact, because often these are enormous structures that are now laying at the bottom of the ocean. So I think having the divers in there is really important. I like the school of fish up above, and when I first viewed it small, I thought it was like a weird like artifact, and I was like, oh, that's odd that they would include this. And then I realized it was all seeing it a little bigger, you can realize all the individual fish in there, which I think is really cool. But yeah, nice overall picture. I'm not a wreck person, but that's a subjective thing. What's that?
It's a good wreck shot if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah. And then wrecks just never do much for me. So this category is not my jam, but a nice image overall.
Okay.
And I really like the story.
Moving into something that's I think more up your street.
Yes,
weird fish doing stuff. This picture is by Shunsuke Nakano, and is obviously a pair of those Japanese sheephead wrasse, duking it out over mating possibilities during their breeding season.
I assume this was behavior winner?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So this, this is probably another one of my favorites of the category winners because, like you said, it's weird fish doing things, and that's always going to be appealing to me. And I would love to see these fish in the wild, so that helps get a few extra points as well. The one thing that I wish he had done with this is cropped a bit off the top, as I think there's a little bit too much black empty space up there, and so it feels a little unbalanced compared to the bottom of the frame. But the timing is fantastic. I like the harsh lighting to really show shadows and textures on the fish. And the composition, obviously, with them going mouth to mouth and being able to see the important bits of these pretty unattractive fish, works really nicely. So you can see the teeth, you can see that big chin, that very unattractive forehead. Yeah, I like the picture. I just wish it was cropped a bit tighter. I think it might help it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's the uncropped frame, and I think his feeling was the more he crops it, the more he loses in terms of the fish itself. I think,
that's fair.
a slightly lower camera angle would have definitely improved that symmetry.
And these are only in Japan, right?
Well, yeah, I assume so. They might stretch into, I don't know whether you might get them in Northern Korea or maybe off the Chinese coast where people aren't diving.
Yeah, true.
But but certainly that that temperate West Pacific.
Okay.
Right. Moving now into the portrait category winner, which is another sort of non typical underwater subject, with this cluster of camels drinking from a water butt in the middle of the desert. And I, like a lot of people, I rather love that mouth that appears at the bottom of the frame in a very comical way. It's obviously a very comedic image. Technically, well done. The fact that I think it's it's a nice formation. It's always fun to have an unusual subject. And I think in a portrait category, a revealing picture of a subject you're just not used to seeing, just has so much weight. There's obviously a lot of weird stuff gets entered into this category. It's not that we get one weird animal every year and that's something we're interested in. But I think of the unusual creatures entered this year, this was a real standout for us. And this was taken, so I didn't say, it was taken by Abdulaziz Al Salah from Kuwait.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this one. I'm not a what was it photographed in, you said?
I presume in their water butt that they drink out of.
Oh, so he probably set up like a remote thing for this. I often with competitions, I have to remember that not all of them, like you have said 1,000 times, and I still haven't quite had it hammered into my brain. It's an underwater competition, not necessarily a wildlife competition.
And it's a photo competition as well. I think that's, something that's also important. It's about the end result, which is why we don't read the stories. It's that's not, fair. Who strive the hardest. It's about that. It's about the shot.
Yeah.
I think we always celebrate underwater photography in all its genres within that.
This one is reminiscent to me of Sully's The Monkey Looking Down Through the Water.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe it's Mike Korolevsky, however you say his last name.
Korostelev.
Yeah, he is the bear coming down through the frame as well. And I think maybe I'm a bit biased towards those because those were shot in the wild and not in a trough necessarily. So this one's, I appreciate the comedic value of it. I do think that mouth below is quite funny. Not quite as appealing to me as the rasp beforehand, but it's not my favorite image, just because and largely that's because of the story behind it, I think. Mm-hmm. But that's why photography is subjective.
Yeah. Right, let's roll us on then into the new category for this year, which was a category coral reefs. I think that this category wasn't as well entered as we'd hoped. Mm-hmm. We felt that one of the reasons we wanted to introduce it was that we felt that coral reefs are where the majority of underwater photographers do the majority of their dives. Yet it's quite difficult to win wide-angle categories or macro categories or portrait categories with coral reef images. Judges tend, not just in our competition, but in all competitions, tend to be drawn towards things they don't see very much. We always joke that, or we always comment that far more freshwater pictures ever get awarded in the wildlife photographer than coral reefs. So we felt that it would be really helpful to photographers to have a dedicated coral reefs category. And so we introduced it this year. But I think a lot of photographers were either didn't know it existed until maybe after they'd entered, or were unsure exactly what we were looking for in that category. So it didn't get the entry numbers that we were hoping. And it was the smallest of the international categories as a result. But I think after revealing the top 10 this year and really revealing that it's kind of anything goes as long as it's coral reef related, I hope that, come next year, it will get a really bumper entry, because really just about every photographer I know has got shots that they could enter in this category.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to notice.
So I was going to tell you what the shot was. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah.
So the photo is taken by Catherine Holmes, and it's a picture of a lush reef in Raja Ampat, which is likely to feature regularly in this category in the future.
So I was going to say a comment on the low entries. Is I think whenever there's a new category introduced in a competition, like you said, everybody's kind of hesitant as to what there exactly is being looked for. So like you said, I think next year, after people see the selection, be like, oh, this is what the kind of stuff that can be entered in it. So I imagine next year we'll have more entries. This was another one of my favorites. Just the explosion of life on this reef. I've not been to Raja, but this is kind of how I picture it looking. So it's a beautiful scene. There's so much packed into that little. There's not a bare spot of anything in the frame, which I think is amazing. I love the bait fish filling in the crack. There's two things. There's one thing I wish. I wish those two main fish, the coral grouper and the wrasse or whatever that is, were perpendicular to the frame, or so you could see, or parallel, I guess, so you could see their eyes. That's the only thing I wish about this. Other than that, I think it's a fantastic picture. The colors are spectacular, and I think it's probably a worthy winner for the category.
Yeah, and obviously we debated those fish at length during the judging. And yeah, definitely, the judges felt that actually, it was quite, there was plenty of fish coming towards the camera. There's plenty of fish in the frame. And it was, I think, perhaps when you see so many images, you're like, oh, well, it's quite fun to have something a little bit different. You still see the colors and the beauty of the fish.
Yeah.
And they're also interacting with the scene around them. Apologies if there's any excess noise in mine. I don't really want to swear on the video show, so.
I think this, like you said, the picture is about the overall scene more than a specific subject. So I think the fish facing away is a real nitpick, and I would wager the vast majority of people aren't going to notice that anyway. But like you always say, whenever we do these, we're looking at these with a critical eye instead of saying, yeah, they're all fantastic. So those are one very nitpicky thing about an overall beautiful picture.
No, but it's like, I think it's always important to have that conversation, because I think it's what people get out of these reviews. They can look at the pictures themselves, but having those discussions. Right, on to the black and white category. It's kind of the last of our international underwater photography categories, and this was won by Enric Guenard with these pictures of bottlenose dolphins from the Red Sea.
I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this one. Black and white is often hard because we always shoot in color. And I know I remember reading your masterclass book, and you said, when you shoot in black and white, you have to go in with the assumption that you're going to be shooting for black and white, and not just taking a color scene and turning it into black and white. So I think this is probably a scene that it looks good in black and white. I'm not sure about the composition of it overall for me. Let me actually make sure I'm not missing any of it here. Yeah, this is easier said than done to view it after the fact. I wish the far right dolphin wasn't cut off, and that the big dolphin in the top corner wasn't bisecting that other one. I love the two vertical ones that are looking out from underneath the shadowed dolphin. I think those are fantastic, and I like the interaction with all four of those. There's just something about the composition of it that doesn't quite do it for me. And obviously that's easier said now that I'm sitting here looking at it than it was in the moment, especially because dolphins are constantly moving and they're very fast.
Yeah, but I think as well, although you can't always compose with dolphins, you can shoot lots of frames.
Yeah,
And, so, while there may not be 100% deliberate composition from the photographer, there's 100% I'm going to process this frame choice.
yeah.
So they've made those decisions consciously. So I think it's perfectly valid to make those critiques.
Yeah, I mean, the black and white categories are always a bit strange to me because I think there's some of them that I love when you start to get towards that like fine art side I really like. But oftentimes and this is again a personal thing, I prefer color, even though I can't see it very well. But yeah, I'll be interested to see the rest of the images in this category to see how they stack up. But yeah, I feel like
I can definitely say they're well worth seeing. So
yeah, I feel like I'm being mean, but
no, it's good. It's good. It's why people watch these videos. Like we say every time, if we sit here going great, there's no content. So this one, as you can probably guess, is from our marine conservation category, which is sponsored by the Save Our Seas Foundation, and this was taken by Robert Lehman, and it's a group of fishermen in Indonesia hauling this tiger shark ashore. And I've certainly never seen a tiger shark in Indonesia, and I think this picture gives us a little bit of a feeling why. Yeah. I really like the feeling of being in the heart of the action here, and I think everyone, we all particularly like the gesture from that sort of main fisherman whose face you can see, who's clearly not keen about being photographed doing this. Now, what I like about this image as a message is that these guys are doing nothing illegal, but still they don't want to be photographed doing it. I think it tells you all you need to know about what these guys probably morally think about what they're doing, even though they're doing it. And so it tells a story. It's, sad to see the end of tiger shark, particularly for me in Indonesia, where you just, I've never seen a tiger shark in Indonesia. So yeah, this was our winner of that category.
Yeah, this one, like you said, I think this one's compelling, if for no other reason, because it almost feels like he wasn't supposed to be taking the picture and he just ran in there real quick. The fisherman saw him, tried to stop him. And like you said, it's interesting because clearly if they don't want to be photographed, they feel a certain way about what they're doing. But it might be one of those things where like they feel they don't have a choice. And that's all they can do about it. It's obviously, like you said, it's really sad about a tiger shark. And,
maybe he just told his wife that he'd gone shopping and
he'd
stuck off fishing with the boys. I shouldn't make light of this, but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, these pictures are always sad to me. And I think they're probably sad to a lot of people, which is often why they're impactful. And
I think we felt this one with the beautiful light, the nice setting, the really, involving composition. And yes, there's some blood in it, but it's not a gory shot.
Yeah, the photograph is fantastic. It's just what it's depicting bums me out. But the timing's great. Like you said, the light is nice. The action's nice. It's just a sad thing to see. But I do like the fact that it's not overly gory. Just as a, selfishly, I like the fact that it's not overly gory, even though the end result for the shark is the same.
Yeah. Okay, let's roll into our next category. This is our up and coming category, which is sponsored by Paddy. And this one is called Underwater Aurora, and it's another photo from, I presume, Car Wash Cenote in Mexico, taken by a photographer called Ruruka from Korea.
Yeah, so these like we discussed on I think it was the Ocean Art one.
Yeah.
Ocean Art episode. Cenote shots often start to blend together for me. As when you see one after another, it feels like there's only so much you can do. But I think a lot of what these pictures rely on are conditions, like specific conditions that you can get that make the picture stand out. And I've not been to Car Wash, and I think the image in Ocean Art was also, I think you said was probably Car Wash.
Yeah, it was. I think it's probably taken a little bit to that. I've only been to Car Wash twice myself, but I think a little bit to the right of this, because it's shot through the trees.
But even then, the conditions looked completely different. There was a gradient in the water and ocean art, whereas this one has a really spooky vibe of, I assume that's yellow or green. I can't really tell.
Yeah, it
Um,
goes from red at the top through orange to yellow and then down to green at the bottom.
yeah. So I, I
So,
apologize.
sorry, Matt. Yeah,
I can't see all
it's the
that.
black and white category.
um, but it has a really spooky vibe to it,
Mm,
and I like the soft fall off of light. He
mm,
didn't crush the blacks on the outside of the frame, so you can still see a lot of the details in the rocks up above and then the on the substrate, which I think works really well.
mm.
Let me actually center this a bit more. Um, no, actually, if I pull up the full image, it does end up fading to black on the edges, but I like that he didn't just completely crush all the blacks around the focal point of the frame. So you can kind of get the idea of the light, how it would look in real life as it fades off into blackness. I think that works really well. And I can appreciate that this is probably even more impactful if you can actually see all the colors in it, which I cannot. So that's probably hindering my appreciation of it a little bit.
Yeah, I think we were just impressed because I think this is the quality of which in the past would do very well in the main categories. So to have it in the up and coming category, it was just just really remarkable, execution really in actually what is a surprisingly challenging place to take photos in the cenotes because of the darkness.
Mm.
And the fact that you're really having to be a master of the lighting. Right. Moving now into our compact category, and I know this is the one picture in the winners that you knew who had taken it.
Yes.
So maybe you want to tell us that who took this one.
This is my buddy Bryant from the Florida Everglades.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite local fish we have here, Florida gar. They are notoriously difficult to photograph as they can often be really skittish. But every once in a while, you get one that is pretty bold and unafraid of you. Oftentimes, it ends up being the case if they're blind in one eye, you can often approach pretty closely from that side, although this guy looks like he has perfect vision. The challenge then becomes getting the fish close and having a compelling scene around it. And this is one of the best gar pictures. And I know Bryant shot this on a GoPro, which is pretty remarkable,
Mm.
especially because this is one of the best gar pictures I think I've seen. And it was awarded in Ocean Art last year, the year before. Well worthy of being awarded in UPY as well. The light beams coming in, the backlit fins on the gar, the reflection in the background, and being able to see up through the trees. This is probably, and obviously, because it's a location close to home and it's a subject close to my heart, this is my favorite of the category winners. And it's also just a spectacular picture in my opinion. And I like having the bass in there as well. But it's the overall feeling and ambiance in the shot that I think really makes it, and then the lighting on the gar.
Yeah, so this won the compact category, which is obviously also open to action cameras and phones and any sort of simple photographic device. But until this year, we'd had a restriction on it that you could only enter it if your only camera was a compact type camera. And we changed that rule this year, so this is the first year that Bryant could actually enter the category, because obviously having a bigger camera as well prohibited him from entering it in the past. And so so we were really excited to see so many, well-known photographers from outside the compact shooting sphere coming into this category and showing what can be done. And I hope this picture gets a lot of press and shows people, because a huge number of people have got a GoPro or similar type camera, shows people that you really can get out there and take amazing photos. And next year we plan to have a phone specific category as well, but with the same rules of really wanting top shooters to get out there, because I think one of the things that UPY can do with its big platform is to promote more people having a go at stills photography. And I think 10 years ago, stills photography, we had really good compact cameras, really cheap housings for them. And there was a very easy route, an inexpensive route into underwater photography. And I think that we've really lost that now. You turn up at a camera shop now and it's kind of like, well, you could get a TG or an RX 100, but they're all quite expensive anyway. And, the housings are quite expensive because there aren't really so many cheap polycarbonate housings. And I think it's really important that the underwater photography community for its own future is promoting great imagery with relatively basic, or you already own the thing in the taste of a phone system. So so we feel these are really important kind of for our community to have these categories, and to have such a great winner in this category shot with a GoPro is fantastic, I think.
Yeah. So well done, Bryant. Stoked to see him awarded, especially with this picture, as I love this one, and I'm quite jealous of this one.
Yeah, it's an amazing frame. It really is. I mean, I've liked it since we first saw it.
Yeah.
And obviously during the judging, I knew whose picture it was, which does sort of, influence things. So in the judging, I very much, if there's a situation like that, I'll always take a back seat and let the other two judges, who neither of whom had a clue what it was or where it was, drive it from in terms of its progression. Right. Just to finish off, we'll whiz through the British categories. This was our British wide angle winner, taken by David Alpert, and I think even though you're not a British diver, I think you can probably appreciate this one.
Yeah, I like. Well, see, as we've discussed before, I like cold water stuff anywhere, and there's plenty of UK marine life that I would like to see eventually, including these guys. I love the eye contact. I love the sun rays coming down. I'm not sold on the seaweeds coming up from below. They're a little bright, and I think it draws the eye a touch. But I love the seaweed on the seal's right side, and then the other seaweed curling in on the far side of the frame. I really enjoy both of those. And obviously, like, seals are adorable. And getting I've never actually been in the water with these are gray seals, right?
Yeah. This is taken in the county I live in, so if
cool.
you do come and visit, you know where we're going.
I've seen videos of them. They don't. Sometimes it looks like they're probably pretty easy to photograph when they're chewing on your fins and they're sitting right in front of you. But oftentimes it seems like they're just all over the place, similar to how sea lions can be.
Yeah, they move slower, and I think they're not as initially friendly, if you know what I mean. They don't come racing up to you, but they choose their moments and enjoy sneaking up on you.
So I would like to do seals eventually. So at some point we'll come over and I'll visit you, and maybe we can do the seals. And does the cuttlefish run still happen over there anymore?
Not really. Unfortunately, the local fishermen realised that although no one in the UK eats cuttlefish, the French love eating them. So yeah, they put a fishery out. They just put pots with female cuttlefish in right across the bay, and they basically caught them all.
Dang. That's a bummer.
Yeah. So right, let's move on to happier things.
Wait, before we move on, who did you say shot that last picture? I'm sorry,
David Alpert, who's one of the British folks. Yeah. Next up is the macro category picture taken by Dan Bolt. We don't have any, dedicated black water diving in the UK, so it's exciting to see black water images from the UK. This one with a shrimp riding inside a really unusual looking Medusa, so really, really interesting to see.
So the way you described it as unusual is different than what first came to mind when I saw it, in terms of its description. But as a photograph, I like it. It looks like he's glowing, and I obviously I'm in addition to sun rays, well composed backscatter is I love. So I love the fact that he left. Excuse me. I love the fact that he left all the backscatter in this. I think if it had been mine, I might have actually brightened it even more. But it's a really nice picture. And I actually the first time I looked at it, I didn't notice the shrimp. I thought it was just a structure inside the, no pun intended, head of the jellyfish.
Yeah.
But it's a really nice picture, and I think well worthy of winning the macro category. And I do know of Dan. I don't know him, but that's a name I recognize. So at least there's a couple names in here that I do recognize. But beautiful picture of a really cool little creature. What is the thing in the structure inside? Is that?
That's just part of the Medusa. Yeah, I think that's probably ovaries, I would guess, or reproductive, really? Or maybe both. Maybe they just but that would be my guess. But this is a hydrozoan Medusa, so kind of related to fire coral type, or I'm not so familiar with them. So, and I've never seen this species. So yeah, I mean, I don't think we've never had them in the. I think one of the things with the British categories is, we do get a lot of seals every year. We get blue sharks and all the kind of classic British subjects. So I think also, if you have a stunning picture of something we haven't seen before, it does stand out well. And then our final category is one called British Waters Living Together. It's a category that we run for one of our sponsors, the Crown Estate, who manage the UK seabed. And this category is about showing human activities on the seabed in combination with nature. And this was our winner in that category. And it's a crab living in amongst all this this chain and an anchor weight, I think it is, taken again by Dan Bolt.
It's interesting, these images, because here locally, obviously our main dive site is Blue Heron, and a lot of it is strewn with trash. So like your first reaction is like, ugh, it's sad and it's gross, and a lot of it is, because a lot of it's like unusable, like fishing line or hooks or anything like that. But a lot of the stuff like bottles or cans or any of that stuff, it ends up being like a haven for marine, like octopus or blennies or things like that. And this reminds me of that, because clearly nobody needs to have a chain with big anchor blocks strewn across the bottom. But if it's there for a little while, things are going to take advantage of it and use it as for whatever. In this case, the crab is using it as shelter. So I think these images can go one of two ways. They can go in a way where it shows that the human impact is somehow benefiting the marine life, or the marine life has learned how to use it to their benefit. Or it can go the other way, where you see things caught in drift nets or gill nets or things like that, which is just there's no benefit to that whatsoever. So it's nice to see that there's a positive, like you said, the whole point of it is living together. It's nice to see that there's a positive aspect to this as well.
Yeah, it's not a category with a strong political agenda. It's just more about showing the reality of what goes on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Right, that's our run through. I hope that'll bring us back on screen. I hope people found that an interesting insight. And thanks, Matt, for your comments on those pictures. Do remember that UPY is much more than just those category winners. I think we spent a lot of time crafting the collection as a whole. So please make sure you head across to underwaterphotographyoftheyear.com and check out those pictures, or see them where there will be. I'm sure there'll be plenty of them in the media.
Yeah.